So my name is Teemu Arina. I guess you already know I'm the creator of the Biohacker Summit, but also I'm the co-author of the Biohacker's Handbook, together with medical doctor Olli Sovijärvi and nutrition expert Jaakko Halmetoja, who is giving the closing keynote here today. And kind of the topic that I want to dive deeper into today is how to hack yourself, really, and how to change your behavior. Because when it comes to health, you know, if you're at the doctor's office, you're a doctor, and someone comes over there and is fighting with issues, health issues, and you tell them very obvious things like you should stop smoking, you should stop drinking, you should eat healthy food, you should rest and not stress out, all of that. Can you do it? And in most cases, people can't change their behavior. You know, you say someone who is smoking, stop smoking, it's not good for you, you're gonna die, they still continue doing it. So why is it so hard to change your habits? Why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult? And I think that's the core of biohacking, really, is like, how do you learn the mastery of changing your own behavior, changing your own habits, to be able to be in control of yourself as well, and to better understand, you know, what can guide you towards the future. So when we think of self-optimization, you know, you want to grow from this cat into a tiger. That's your higher self. That's your kind of ideal self. That's the kind of potential that's in you. So how do you make that manifest? How do you make that change happen? And to me, self-optimization is not really the big things. It's not like you had Christmas break, you got a little bit of weight, you've been drinking, and then you decide, I'm going to cut drinking now for a month, and I'm going to start going to the gym, and I'm going to have a beach party by summer. That's not biohacking. That's not what self-optimization is all about. It's not the big things. It's all the small things that you repeat over and over again. Because we are all robots. So if you really look at your different behavioral patterns, we are all repeating things. And take any great man or woman or thinker or author or scientist of history, what they all have in common is that they have different patterns of behavior. Now, some of those patterns are super beneficial and useful for them to become, you know, what they are. And some of those are kind of dragging them behind. And we all kind of have that. You can probably recognize some of your behaviors. Those things are good in terms of my personality, in terms of how I do things or how I relate to or react to different situations. But then there's these few things that I kind of struggle with. But there is also a lot of like subconscious processes that you're not necessarily aware of. And part of that is also to awaken yourself to realize some of those deeper systems that are programming you all the time. So if you look at what humans do, like why do we do things? You can kind of like reduce that to a few simple neurotransmitters, chemical compounds in your body. So you have a stimulus of something, an input, and there is some process happening in your body, and then there's an output. So for example, the stimulus might be something that releases dopamine. It increases your motivation. It happens when you want to find a mate, or you are trying to search for food, or you feel self-fulfillment for what you're doing. You feel great about things. You have motivation. Now, dopamine in excess can convert to non-adrenaline and adrenaline. So then you become a little bit too stimulated. Now, another neurotransmitter that's super important is serotonin. So that's the, feel good, happy, kind of content thing as well. But leaders tend to have, on average, higher levels of serotonin than others. It's easy to relate to someone who has high serotonin levels. It's kind of like they're more present. They're not too agitated. They're not too stressed or hyperactive. They're kind of like, you can feel their presence. You can feel that they are present. And great leaders have naturally high serotonin levels. And serotonin is, 90% of serotonin is produced in your gut. So taking care of your body, you take care of your mind, you take care of, also the subtle communication that you're sending to your environment. So that's why I think it's super important that we take care of ourselves. Now, the third molecule that is really important to talk about here is not really a molecule, but it's fear. So we do things to avoid death. We avoid getting into issues like, in our working life, everything that kind of programs our nervous system is to avoid death and to be able to reach recognition, motivation, find food. So those are the basic things in our nervous system and in the biochemical messengers that are kind of guiding us towards through this life. And then you have the nervous system, the autonomous nervous system, you can split it into sympathetic nervous system activation, being agitated on something, the so-called fight or flight. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system activation, which is rest and digest, which is also where you may be able for more creative thinking, less automatic ways of doing things. But what is important is how we change. So if you have an input, what is the process and what is the output? Now, the feedback loop is through which you learn. The feedback loop is what makes you recognize that, okay, this happened. I can modify my response next time. Or I can modify the inputs. So, for example, if you are in a stressful situation, let's say you have an argument with a colleague, what we normally do is stop like breathing. It's very shallow breathing, kind of like we start like listening, we stop breathing, we wait for the moment when we can personally say what we believe, we feel hurt, and we try to get into the conversation. Now that increases your heart rate, increases your fight or flight response. You get stressed, you release adrenaline, you more easily get into a very stressful situation there. Now, in that moment, if you just take a little bit of distance from that argument and just take a deep breath, you just exhale slowly, you focus on your breathing, and you just calm down, you relax every single muscle in your body, you might be able to kind of take a different approach next time to this very same situation, to this very same argument. Now, as humans, there is like two ways how we react to things. There is rain and there is sun. Rain is that we immediately react to our nervous system. Then we assume what our response is right. Then we insist, because we have egos and we kind of protect. Oh yeah, I'm not budging anywhere here. And that's what we do. Now we can move from rain to sun, which is you suspend. You take a deep breath. You try to understand. That's the you in sun, understand. And then, when you ask more questions, you start to realize that, my first reaction might not be the right one. And then the N is nurture. It's yes and, not no, I'm right. So that's how we are programmed in different ways, and we can change the program. We can change how we relate to our environment. Now, if you want to change anything in your life, it's really to understand that you are a set of different patterns. You're a robot. You're repeating like 80% of the time. You're doing things almost subconsciously. How many of here has read the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman? Great book. Check it out. System 1 is basically where we react to things like almost automatic. It's almost subconscious, like we can easily, it's programming that we train for. Our typical way of approaching things. Now, then there is the system 2, which requires more energy, more concentration, more inquiry, more presence, requires more of your brain activity as well. And that is where learning happens. Which is the difficult part. That's what is painful, what makes it super painful for us to change our behavior. Now, how you do something, you do everything. How you eat, how you train, how you work, how you engage in relationship, how you sleep, how you repeat all of these patterns is how you do everything. It's not some big changes. It's the small things that do over and over and over again. Talking about those habits, great book by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. Now, many people, when for example, they want to start exercising, suddenly they decide, okay, I'm going to get a gym membership. I'm going to go there like 6 times a week. And after like a month, probably after a week, they just drop it and go back to their old behaviors. It's super hard to change these habits. And what I recommend to do is, instead of having really high expectations to yourself and really high bars, or things that you need to cross, you just set the bar super low, super low. Let's say you are in the morning, you wake up, you go to your kitchen. You don't normally train. You want to start training. You want to do some training at least. And what you're going to do is, once you turn the coffee machine on, or you put the eggs, like every single morning. So you take your existing sequence of behaviors. Think of your own morning routines. Like what happens when the alarm clock goes off? Or what happened already before that, the night before? What is that you usually engage for? How many of you reach for this thing first thing in the morning? Be honest here now, come on. You have your alarm clock here. So what often happens once you turn the alarm clock off? Yeah? Social media, messages, email. Suddenly your morning is completely ruined. So it's a good idea perhaps to turn this thing into airplane mode and just go and do those eggs and all that before you engage for that. But let's say you go and you don't exercise enough and you're waiting for the eggs. Maybe you want to do some static pose while the coffee is coming or the eggs are coming. Do the 30 seconds. It's not hard. It's a small thing. Really low bar. No gym membership, nothing needed. Just do this. And you try to do it every morning. Sometimes you forget it, but just try to repeat it. Super easy. Every day. Doesn't take much of your time. It's not a painful investment to do. And if you do that for 8 weeks, suddenly it becomes automatic. You do it every morning. And suddenly you start running in the morning, or you start doing push-ups or whatever. You start gradually. And if you talk to people who exercise a lot, if they can't exercise, a few days off, they feel unease. It's painful for them. While someone else who never exercises, it's super painful for them to start. So this is the programming that we're talking about here. When you repeat things, you release dopamine, you release neurotransmitters that tell you that this behavior is better than the previous one. But you need to repeat that for, 8 weeks, and then it becomes a solidified new habit. And it's important to understand that there's all these different cues that make you trigger certain behaviors. It could be locations. I think a home or an office is like a freaking software code. You go into your home, suddenly all these programs start, all these windows. I need to do the laundry, I need to do this, I need to do that. Office, the same thing. So think about the locations where you are. So you modify those locations to support the behaviors that you want to get into your life more. Certain time, emotional state, other people. When you're surrounded by certain people, you behave in a certain way, you react in a certain way. You can start thinking about that as well. You are an average of the 5 to 10 people closest to you. So you can start thinking okay, maybe I can get people who are really stimulating me, who are really challenging me. They're not looking me up, but I'm looking up to them. And suddenly, you can start to see that you're getting closer there. But preceding action, the sequence of behaviors is what is key, is to understand that what can I take my current programming and I can bring something new in there, just small, subtle change. And that helps me over time to reach true change. So hacking habits is all these small things. Over time, it's not about, getting a gym membership, going to the gym for 2 months, hardcore, and then never doing it again in your life. It's all these small things that you do repeatedly, year after year. I talk to many authors, like Siim Land. He just tries to write one single page every day. One single page. This guy is really, intense about getting that one page down. And that's why he can produce 5 books, even if he's 23. So you just have to create those patterns of behavior. Now, starting from that, I'm a big believer in quantified self and gathering data so that you understand where you are right now, because there's perhaps subconscious things that you don't realize about your behaviors. And getting some data gives you an idea what's going on. So here's an app called Rescue Time. It helps you to map out how you use different software products on your computer. So you get a cumulative idea of what you are using most of the time, and you can categorize them in red, which is negative or not productive. You can have gray, which is neutral, and then blue is positive things. And you can start to see over time, okay, what am I using my computer for? And then, if you have any kind of sleep tracker, you can track your sleep, and you get an idea of the duration. Over time, you understand how much on average I sleep. And you can have an app on your mobile device called Moment or Instant, that every time you unlock your phone, it immediately records that, and you get an idea of how much you use your phone. And when you put all of that data together, you can kind of understand what your typical day looks like. And you can start asking questions to yourself. It's a good exercise to do, like, tracking some of these like behaviors for 1 or 2 months, and then kind of getting an idea, okay, where am I? Now, I give you an example of some of those habits that we engage ourselves into, most of us, like every day. We have this damn devil's extension of our hand, this mobile device. My friend Jaro Willard calls this the pocket God, that we just look at, every time we wake up, every time we go to sleep, in between, when you have a relaxing moment, you look at your phone, and what do? Almost neurotically, you check your email or social media, and even though you checked it already 5 minutes ago, you're checking it again. And there's still nothing there. Like, it's neurotic behavior. But look at this. I'm opening up my email account here. What happens? Boom. I get my dopamine rush. Emails. Or I open up Facebook. Yeah, the same thing. It makes me take a deep breath. So what I'm doing here, I'm hacking the stimulus. I might have a message, or there is a notification about it, and then the response, release of dopamine. Oh, someone likes something on my picture. Yeah, I'm going to do this more. So I'm creating enough distance between the stimulus and the reaction so that I have enough time to reflect what am I doing here. And this is what meditation really helps, is to kind of, it's not really about emptying your mind. It's really about being able to observe this present moment without attaching to it. And it helps also to practice something like this, eyes open. Like every day, hundreds of times we look at our phone. Every time, take a deep breath, think about, like, do I really need this device? And you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system, so you're actually associating the parasympathetic nervous system activation, the deep exhalation, into getting the reward. So now you get rewarded for taking deep breaths, and if you don't have time to meditate, suddenly you are because of this. Now, here's another app. Many of us have to-do lists, okay? How many of you have not to-do lists? Yeah, not to-do list is the list where you put things that you should do less. We have so many things to do in this life that it's also important to reflect occasionally what I shouldn't be doing. Now, another thing that I recommend to do is this thing called Way of Life. There's a bunch of other apps that also enable something similar. For example, this is the Way of Life. It's for apps, Apple, and you can find Google App Store as well. There's also Habitify. So these are habit tracking apps. There's also one called Habit Bull. And the idea here is that you list the things that you struggle with. I recommend that you start with 3 things, not like 20. Like 3 things that you really want to kind of focus on. And every evening, it will ask you to reflect, did you do that or not? And these are not like work-related things necessarily. These are things that will increase your life quality. So for example, what you might have there is like, don't look at your phone before breakfast. Another thing that you might have there is meet someone who is not related to work. You might have something there like take a deep breath, get a massage, go for sauna, swimming, something like this. Take some time away from the work that you do. And the idea here is not to get it all green. The idea is that you pay attention to it every day. So that's mindfulness, like eyes open. Like every evening you just think, reflect on the day. One thing that I also recommend to do is something called the gratitude journal. So every evening you list 3 things that you're grateful of. Grateful things. And in the beginning it might be slightly challenging. Remember, okay, what's cool today? But after 8 weeks you will start noticing that you recognize them already when they happen in that day. And if you continue doing that, you change your perspective to life completely. Because as humans, we are pattern seekers and we seek for dangerous situations. We are pessimistic, naturally, a bit suspicious about new things. If you train your brain to be optimistic, your brain to focus on the positive side of life, every single day, even if it's the worst day of your life, there is something positive in there. So you become good at what you train for. You also lose what you don't train for. Now, there is also other things that you can do. Like you can give electric shocks to yourself. This Pavlov device is pretty cool. It's like a wristband. But for example, if you don't wake up in the morning because the alarm clock and you have you can just snooze it off and all that. If that's a problem, this device can maybe help you. What it will do, it will give you electric shocks like this, until you wake up and you do some jumping jacks. And once you've done 10 jumping jacks, you're ready to go. So you can also punish yourself, and with fear you can also control your progress. But I don't believe in these kind of things, because there's a lot of self-help literature out there that talks about willpower, that we don't have willpower and how to develop willpower. But I don't think it's about willpower, really. As humans, we are kind of, all these programs, it's hard to change smoking, all that. It's not about willpower. It's about how do you hack your environment so that it supports your growth. How do you change your environment? So if I'm writing a book, I have a separate computer for writing the book. It's not connected to the internet. There's no social media. I can do nothing else but write. I also try to change the context. So I'm actually at the cottage. I'm not at the office. So I create kind of a safe sanctuary for doing those things that I really kind of value. So I'm hacking my environment for that. So in a similar manner, you can just one thing that I recommend to do also is so this is my home screen. There's not many icons here, but believe me, there is more. But it's not the first thing that I see when I open up my phone. If there's a bunch of things, it will prime me to, there is a bunch of things going on there. No. So hack your environment. So biohacking is not only about hacking yourself, but it's hacking your relationship to your environment. Hacking your relationship to the locations, to the tools that you use, to the people you hang around with, how you react to different situations. It's hacking that aspect. When you change your environment, you change yourself. So I like to do some cold thermogenesis. I start my mornings often with cold showers. And the nice thing about that is that it will prime me for stressful situations that day. Because I start my day like this. The moment that day, if I witness a stressful situation, like this morning I took a cold shower. When I got here, I had huge issues of getting our live stream working because the machine broke down and one of the devices broke down. I had to change the laptop, and 2 minutes before going on stage myself, it was ready. But because of the cold shower, I was super calm. It could be worse. So in addition, it helps me to become more of a fat-burning machine. Now, health is to be in balance, and imbalance leads to disease. Now, if you look at your biology, you take copies of your cells. There's this Bruce Lipton book about the biology of belief. Now, if you take two cells, exact copies of themselves, so the other cell, your cell, is in a stressful environment. There's cortisol, there's inflammatory cytokines, there's a bunch of crap in the bloodstream, the environment. Now, the other cell is an environment of love and content and happiness, and there is oxytocin, there is anti-inflammatory messengers, there is growth factors. What happens? That cell will start to fix itself, it will start to divide, it will start to prosper. The other one, which is in a stressful environment, goes into alert mode, doesn't do anything, and if that continues, it will die. Exact copies of the same cell, different environment. And the cell doesn't see what you see. It sees your response to the environment. So if it rains, you can be like, oh, damn, it's raining. Or it can be, oh, nice, there's rain on my skin. So different response, trickling down to a cellular level. And if this environment continues, it provokes an epigenetic change. So there's these pathways that open. Teemu talk about mTOR and AMPK and all that stuff. So suddenly you open up the door for growth, and you start to open the door for epigenetic change. Now, it's not just your biology and DNA that changes in response to the environment, it's your physiology as well. Your brain, suddenly, when you exercise your large muscles, your cognitive capabilities improve. Certain parts of the brain improve. If you practice meditation or yoga, suddenly you become better at emotional control because you're actually growing those parts of the brain that are responsible for it. So, and that's not the whole story. You are a product of your environment as well. There's the bacteria in your gut. You live in a symbiotic relationship with it. You have been for millions of years. And the same guys, eukaryotes that evolved out of bacteria, eukaryotes. Teemu talk about mitochondria. Mitochondria are actually originating from eukaryotes. So when you take antibiotics that are killing bacteria, also the number of mitochondria in the gut reduces, and you get less energy suddenly. So there's all these cascading effects. By understanding not just how to hack your environment, but how to live in harmony with your environment, which is very much part of you. So who you think you are is not who's behind the eyes, really. Who's there? Because there's a bunch of guys over here, aliens in your gut, that are sending all kinds of biochemical messengers that are influencing your mood and behavior. And they are controlling you. It's freaking parasites. So genetic change, genes, great. But it's really about the environment. Like, how do you respond to the environment? Because what epigenetic change is the environment triggering a change in DNA. DNA doesn't do anything. It doesn't switch on or off. It's the environment, the proteins basically, things in the blood flow that are turning on or off certain switches in there. To better understand this, obviously you can go to the biomarkers, you can go to the biosignals, you can dive deeper. You can, with modern technology, it's cheaper and more accessible for all of us to gain a picture of what's going on. Because what gets measured gets managed. This is what Peter Drucker said. So when you start to measure something, you start to provoke change already. You're influencing the system. That's the problem in any kind of in science also. There's this thing called observer effect. When you observe something, for example, light, depending on how you measure it and look at it, it looks like a wave or particles. So as humans, when we start to observe things in our own behavior, you already change the system. So that's what, in the end, biohacking is like a modern approach to enlightenment. It's kind of thousands of years old of knowledge kind of becoming to this century through technology and science and all of that. But it's same old story. You have a human computer, there's a bunch of things going on. There's the blueprint behind it, all the metabolic pathways, there's neurotransmitters going on, your behaviors that are emitted from it, genetics, epigenetics, metabolomics. Now we have the ways to kind of understand how these things work. We have the instruments to go deeper and understand what's going on. Bioinformatics will be for health what the microscope was for biology or what the telescope was for astronomy. And now that we are armed with artificial intelligence, so I think one of the biggest change in science comes from this fact. So the first we discovered the microscope, we were able to look at on a cellular level what's going on there. We dissected the DNA, and now we are seeing, okay, that's the microcosmos. But it is not the whole story. So then you have the telescope, and you look at the whole universe and studying the wavelengths of stars, you suddenly start to understand, what's going on here. And you can, by connecting the microcosm and macrocosm, which are, just like fractalic representations of the same thing, you start to understand better what's going on. But it's complex, and as humans, we are not very good at pattern recognition in terms of really complex issues that are beyond us. So now we are basically arming machines, machine learning algorithms, artificial intelligence, to tap into that complexity that humans can't get into. And eventually we will surrender, we will give away some of that power to the very technologies, to the very AI, the very machines, the very algorithms that we created to help us live better, perform better, and to take us as humanity to a new level. So, but it starts really here, understanding that you are a product of behaviors and changes that happened in thousands of years' time. And there's still the trauma from your own ancestors, like famines and infections and lack of food. It's still affecting your biology today. So now that we are living in abundance and we have access to endless food sources in supermarket, you get diabetes. But it was useful, that adaptation behind the blood sugar control that happened centuries ago when food was not as available. So it might take a few generations, and then what happens is we become actually resilient. We become adapted to the fact that we sit a lot. I don't know what Wesley thinks about this, but maybe maybe a few generations and we become better at sitting, just from a health perspective. Or maybe we can just reconnect to our true nature and understand that that's not how humans work, how humans function. And we don't have time to wait that we upload our consciousness to computers, that we have to act today. And it's combining your physique, your genetics, your biomarkers, all of those things, understanding your lifestyle factors, how those are affecting things, and combining all of those to change yourself. Stress management is a learnable skill. Things don't happen to you by accident. You are a lot of control. Like a lot of control you have, if you want. If you allow that control and or let's say wisdom and presence to come to the surface. So looking at the nervous system, too much stimulation is bad, too little stimulation is bad. Controlling this equilibrium of peak performance is somewhere in the middle, starting from your nervous system, finding the balance between the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system activation, finding the balance between those things. Remembering to take a deep breath, take a cold shower, just take some distance to the things that happen to you. But at the same time, know that if you need to do something, you know how to do it. That's what martial artists know, what athletes know, like whatever kung fu monks. They all kind of practice the same stuff. They push human boundaries, but they also practice, breathing techniques, simple things like food, all that. Because burning the candle at both ends is the end result of high performance done wrong, which is better, faster, stronger, more coffee, more supplements, more nootropics, more whatever. It's not like that. You have to find some wisdom in how you do things. And that helps you to go from burning yourself out to mastering yourself and taking yourself to the new level. So more information in the Biker's Handbook. There is the book you can browse the Finnish book at our stand, at Biker Center stand. The English book is coming out at biohackingbook.com. You can already pre-order that one. So with that, thank you all coming, because you are now the freaking Jedi. Remember that you have the power to change things. You have now some deeper understanding of the universe. And because of that, let's call it force, you can tap into it. And you can take, yourself, by changing yourself, you can change the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Switch it on when I go on stage. Is it already turned on?
Amazing. Really, really good. And like you said, the small things are the big things, and bringing awareness about it is where the key is at. So what would be some things that you are kind of tracking on a daily basis mostly? What's your main focus?
Yeah. So one thing that I've been looking at is the data from this Oura ring. When it comes to there's a few things that I'm kind of interested in tracking. I'm not looking at sleep duration. I'm looking at my heart rate variability, like how that recovers, and also heart rate, how that recovers. Because if I see that my heart rate is going like this, it's not good. If I see it going like this, it's not good. But if I see it going like this, it's awesome, because it drops, and then there's some recovery happening, and your heart rate starts to increase when cortisol is released in the morning hours, and then it's time to wake up. And I see from that shape that, okay, balance, not like all over the place. The same with heart rate variability, kind of like the higher numbers. So those are interesting to me right now.
Yeah, you can see some sort of a pattern or correlation in your nervous system in real time, and then you can base or structure your coming day based on those readings. In a sense, if you are stressed out, if you're under-recovered, then you're not going to go hit the gym hard, because it's going to cause more damage.
You got it. So when I travel, I notice sometimes I sleep 8 hours, but I've been traveling. I notice that my nervous system is not recovered even 1 or 2 days after. And based on that knowledge, I know okay, I'm going to focus more on things that will restore the resources so that I can run a marathon again. It's kind of subtle. You don't really run a marathon to a next marathon. You take a break, because growth doesn't happen in stimulus. Growth happens in rest. It's true for learning. You need to sleep to really learn the things that you really stimulate yourself with. And if in terms of exercise, you need to rest to, if you did exercise, to really make that growth happen.